May it please the Court, I appear for the defendant, Mr. Richard Falk. My name is Michael Pommer and I represent NSW Solicitors. We submit that the defendant, in his actions to take up employment with Black Gold Limited, is no way in breach of the employment contract which he held with Fossil Fuels R Us Limited or any clauses found within this contract. We further argue that the contract was void upon the defendant's termination of employment with Fossil Fuels R Us Limited and any continuing obligations as imposed by clauses 14 and 15 are null in effect. The post-termination restrictions imposed by clauses 14 and 15 are unreasonable in relation to the interests of the defendant. The continuing restrictions upon the defendant constitute a restraint of trade and is contrary to the interests of the public. Our first submission goes to the point of justifying the restraint of trade, which clauses 14 and 15 have the effect of doing. On this point, we raise an argument as pertaining to the case of Nordenfeldt Guns and Ammunition, which the prosecution has cited already, Your Honour. Lord Denning states in relation to the restraint on trade, it is only justified if the restriction is reasonable with reference to the parties concerned, while at the same time being no way injurious to the public. On this point, our argument is based on the industry with which the matter is concerned. Fossil Fuels R Us Limited and Black Gold Limited specialise in the extraction of a natural resource, that being oil. To restrict competition in any way would be extremely detrimental to the public. An advantage over the supply of oil has far-reaching implications for the economy and its markets. In support of this argument, we cite C Convenience Stores Pty Ltd and Wayfield Plaza Retirement Pty Ltd, a 2012 case found in the South Australian Supreme Court reports at page 14. Specifically, this case deals with a covenant preventing land from being used as a petrol station. It was held not to be reasonable due to the public interest in encouraging competition in retail sale of petrol. The second submission is that the customers of the businesses are as such incidental to the primary process of oil extraction, which each organisation deals in. The final customer is, in effect, the price-driven economy and the public consumer. In this connection, we argue that the exploitation of the pre-existing relationship will only arise when the provision of services during the period of employment was such as to establish what may be described as a client connection. A restraint would therefore only be appropriate to protect the employer's interests where the employee has become the human face of the business. We will argue that the defendant in his working capacity fails to establish any connection with the ultimate customer. This argument is set out in Bedanko Nominees Pty Ltd and Money, a 2012 case which can be found in the Victorian Supreme Court of Appeal cases at page 64, paragraph 7. In our third submission, we argue the words "in any capacity" as found in clause 14 are too broad and too restrictive on the defendant's ability to earn a living in a lawful way. Again, we cite Nordenfeldt Guns and Ammunition. In this case, the promise not to compete with Maxim in any way was found to be too broad in the circumstances, and accordingly, the restraint was unreasonable. Further, we cite Buckley and Tuddy, a 1971 case found in volume 125 of the Commonwealth Law Reports, page 353. In this decision, the court held the restraints were plainly a fetter on the right of a player to seek and engage in employment. Similarly, we contest the contract in question imposes unreasonable restraints that prevent the defendant from earning his living in whatever lawful way he chooses. The above submissions go to argue that the restraint imposed by clause 14 and 15 go beyond what is reasonably necessary to protect the interests of the defendant and is contrary to public policy. Your Honour, for that reason, we submit that the contract is void in its entirety and the defendant be allowed to continue under his current employment with Black Gold Limited.